It's time for another show from Colin Jones, the Reasonable Adventurer. Time for you to take another step towards creating your own opportunities for satisfaction.
And it is a huge welcome to you all to episode 103. I'm really excited because I feel like I've just found a little groove that I can get into that's going to enable the show to get back on track and to be able to roll along like it did in the first 100 episodes and without these big breaks that we have in between. And I'll explain that as we're going through and trying to make sense of how confident you can be about episode 104 coming along very soon. So, the pretext, what's actually happening here? Well, we're moving from QUT to USQ, University of Southern Queensland, new job. Moving from entrepreneurship education to academic development. So, to make sense of all of this and to be able to explain it in a way where the backstory is also present, I thought we'd go back to where we left in episode 102. I challenged you guys to keep thinking about your reflecting. And I wonder where that's got to with you. And for me, it's endured quite a lot of little ups and downs along the way. I headed off to the UK just after the last episode. I caught up with a lot of colleagues, Kath and Andy Penaluna, Tom Williamson, Kelly Smith, Neil Coles, Laura Davis, Paul Hannon, Eleanor Vetrano, just to name a few. Met some new interesting folks like Felicity Benson, who seems to have caught the EE bug, and that's fantastic. She's doing some great work and is really bringing some new thinking into the space and challenging us and asking us questions which we might not have normally contemplated. So I think keep doing that, Felicity, because I think we're all going to benefit from you turning over the stones and having a look what's around. But during this process, a lot of discussions around what was authentic EE ensured, which really was carrying over from some of the conversations in episode 102. With the challenge that we all face being debated at some length, and never really any great agreement because, one, we all have different viewpoints and we all operate in different contexts. But it's really interesting to try and understand those different types of contexts, and that really makes it easier to make sense. So, but really, to be honest with you, it was my chat with one of the show's most loyal listeners, Katie Ray, who, while we have to acknowledge she only listens to half the show because she puts it on twice the speed, but that's neither here or there. That really impacted me. We were sitting down having dinner at a conference dinner, and I was telling her about my thoughts about leaving EE. And, I discussed this sort of fading energy for solving EE's most challenging issues. And we talked about life after EE. And it was an interesting conversation. And while I shared my inner frustrations with a few, I could see Katie's disappointment that I was going to leave EE. It was almost like we were rowing in the same direction, and if I was to leave, it would be one less person in the boat. It would make it harder for her to sort of have that sense of conviction or to sort of keep with the sort of the promise that we could sort of make things better or turn things around. So it was a conversation that stayed with me on the way back to London and then on the way flying back to Australia. But nevertheless, as I kept thinking through those things, I knew I needed to leave EE. There's a stronger calling, a vocational calling, that had become louder and, for me, impossible to ignore. Parker J. Palmer states, "We teach who we are," a mantra that I hold very, very close to my authenticity. And it sort of always begs that question, so who are you? If you teach who you are, who are you? Having left UTAS and arrived at and settled into QUT, I still feel very much adrift 4 years down the track. My vocational calling. The English poet Matthew Arnold, many years ago, as in hundreds of years ago, spoke of wandering between two worlds, one dead, the other powerless to be born. What a brilliant capturing of my sense of place. Wandering between two worlds, one dead, the other powerless to be born. Recognising my lack of being authentically tethered to any specific place, I was able to better visualise my continued connection to the reasonable adventurer and my desire to create opportunities for satisfaction. At the same time, I just happened to also receive a chapter for my new book from Zen Parry titled, "If You're Riding a Dead Horse, Dismount." Zen's doing some really, really interesting work in tribal education in and around entrepreneurship education, and we'd been talking through these such ideas, but when the chapter turned up, it just brought it all back to me, and I thought, wow, do I have the courage to dismount? Wasn't entrepreneurship education my home, where I did my thing, where I've gained varying levels of recognition from my peers globally? So what was dead? Me? EE? Perhaps this phase of my life? It's interesting to look back and try to connect the dots of your career. I mean, I was a deckhand who cleaned a boat and painted a boat. I was a diesel fitter who fixed graders, bulldozers and cranes. I was a financial advisor. I don't think I was a particularly good one, but I was a financial advisor. I was a franchisor. And when I look back on those very different pathways that I've been, wandering, it's hard to sometimes work out how they all contribute to me having accidentally stumbled into academia and haven't been doing the work that I've been doing. I actually laugh sometimes when I remember and contemplate what might have been if I'd been successful in applying for a job of a grave digger back in 1986. I'd finished my apprenticeship as a diesel fitter, and there was a job I had no work options in front of me, and there was a job at the local cemetery in Hobart, and it said, you've got to like gardening because there's roses to look after. I like gardening. And you need to have some mechanical skills because the digger breaks down from time to time, so you need to be able to do some basic repairs and servicing on the digger. I think, well, this job's perfect for me. It makes you wonder what might have happened if they'd said, yes, come in and be a part of the team, dig some holes and look after the roses. It makes me wonder where I might have wandered heading forward from that. Clearly there's a big difference between a vocation and a vocational calling, right? Some of us do jobs that we're not really invested into emotionally. Some of us are doing work that we've never really felt a strong calling for. We've, maybe a friend of the family got us a job, or we just found ourselves doing something. Well, my vocational calling has always been centred on learning. And it didn't have to be in the workplace. It could be my neighbours, it could be family, it could be friends, it could be anyone. I've always had a bit of a bent towards wanting to help people. I get a lot of satisfaction from that. But Zen's horse wasn't going anywhere. It was as if I was wandering between two worlds, one dead and the other unable to be born, in the context of what I've come to see as authentic entrepreneurship education. It's as if higher education is in too much of a hurry to slow down and let the learning that I would advocate for happen. It's just in too much of a hurry. To find the world that I wanted to enter, I would need to dismount and find a new pathway, a pathway with a heart. In doing so, I find myself free, just as I've encouraged thousands of students over the years, free to find a path with a heart. And yet, if I return to Katie's concern about me leaving the world of EE, I'm reminded of another beautiful saying. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the rest of the world calls a butterfly. It needn't be the end of the world. It's another starting position. It's another phase of life. It's another opportunity to become something different. So I need to find a new pathway that would lead me to a new world where the reasonable adventurer and my vocational calling for helping others to learn could call home, where I could teach who I am. A world where I could become, in the words of Isabel Allende, rich by spending myself in the service of others. And the neat thing about my academic career thus far, that in the process of becoming rich by spending myself, I've accumulated many years of experience in various academic development roles. Not because I foresaw a career opportunity there, but because in academic development, my scholarly momentum was maintained. Even when I experienced the frustration of wandering around in unresponsive worlds, academic development roles could be volunteered into. I could go into those spaces and make a difference. I could be a part of something positive. And I found such a new world at USQ, where an academic development role was open, and I was fortunate enough to gain that position. And it's quite interesting that of late I've been working with this fantastic young man, Gustav Hug, on a paper on the possible role of wisdom in entrepreneurship education. My conversations with Gustav have been really stimulating, and far from creating any regret, they've confirmed that the world we collectively are trying to imagine for EE is a world that most probably wouldn't be easily developed in terms of getting higher education to say, yes, this is the type of graduate that we think we should be developing. So I'm stepping away from EE, but I'm sure I will remain a contributor to the thinking that supports the development of the field as we go forward. So what is ahead? For one, renewed enthusiasm for this show. I would like the focus of the coming episodes to be around my application of the reasonable adventurer mindset to my new academic development role at USQ. So let's just briefly return to the 6 attributes of the reasonable adventurer for those who are not quite as familiar with them. There's 6. First one, intellectuality. So I can see that having a nuanced appreciation of the context is going to be vital in deciding what matters and what does matter, moving between individual, disciplinary and campus contexts. Can't just walk in and assume there's an approach that'll work. There's a set way of thinking about things that'll work. It's a matter of trying to understand context, ruling in and ruling out things as you move. Secondly, close friendships. Meeting new folks and coming to grips with their various personal and institutional viewpoints will certainly help me to adjust my own thinking accordingly. Independence in value judgments. It's important that I trust my judgment of how I can serve others best. My developing heuristic generalisation approach is critical here, hopefully ensuring I suspend judgment prior to determining how I might be able to best work with others and their situations. Fourth, tolerance of ambiguity. I'm excited to embrace the ambiguity of an alternative culture and trust myself to find my way, keeping an eye on ensuring that I listen to my heart along the way. Fifth, breadth of interest. Developing an uncommon interest in the commonplace is a must in the role of academic developer. Everyone's teaching context represents an opportunity for advancement. Respect the context, appreciate the limitations, and support the aspirations. I can't wait to find those nuggets of gold in the ordinary, everyday world of people's teaching. And finally, a sense of humour. I'm very conscious of finding space to be myself. When I'm laughing, as many of you know, I'm effective. So in developing new friendships and being respectful of others, this will enable my true self to be present and influential. So there's an update on the show, on my current movement from one place to another place, from one role to another role. And as I hope I've just been able to convince you, it's going to create a really stimulating space for me to be able to think about who's the reasonable adventurer, how does the reasonable adventurer operate, and to be able to share those feelings with you. Not just my own, but hopefully to be able to bring to you the experiences of others and to find new aspects and angles to contemplate this notion of being able to create opportunities for satisfaction. So thank you for tuning in again. I can assure you episode 104 won't be very far away at all, because I'm now extremely excited and reinvigorated about learning, about teaching, about creating opportunities for satisfaction, and I'm looking forward to sharing that journey with you. Until we meet again, happy reflecting.